Hi, and welcome to part 2 of my recap of Lost Season 6, Episode 1 and 2, entitled LAX. As soon as they get to LA, Jack finds out that they lost his father's body in transition. Now, I find this very odd because in Season 1, Jack finds the coffin but can't find his father's body. So, regardless of what timeline we're in, Christian Shepherd never makes it to LA. Interesting. Jack and his gang are taking Sayid to the temple, and that's when we hear some whispers and some piratey-looking others capture them and take them to the temple. Oh, that's kind of convenient. That's where they wanted to go. At least they didn't get lost. At long last, we get a clear look at the temple, and we get to meet our two new characters, which Lostpedia has named Dogen and Lennon, which I'm not sure if that's their actual names, but until we are given a in-show name, that is what they will be referred to as. Dogen is Japanese, which is freaking awesome, and Lennon appears to be his translator. It's not like he needs a translator, it's just that Dogen associates speaking English with throwing up. And part 2 of LAX starts off with another answer. What is in the guitar case that Jacob gave Hurley? They open it, and you find a giant wooden ankh. I believe I am pronouncing that correctly. And inside the ankh is a message from Jacob. Now, Dogen and Lennon were going to shoot everyone until he read this message. So after a quick little roll call, which I believe the piece of paper has a list of their names and possibly a description of what's so important about them. Of course, we don't get to see what is on this letter. But after reading it, Dogen tells them to go to this spring, which is deeper inside the temple. Which apparently the spring at one point had clear water, but now that water is muddy. This spring also seems to be the source of their healing powers, and I am assuming this is where Richard took Ben towards the end of Season 5 after he had been shot as a kid. Oh, and on a side note, I remember reading a lot of comments that a lot of people were worried about this hourglass thing, wondering if it's some sort of magic device or something. It's just an hourglass, apparently. No magic or anything, just a timer of how long it takes to drown Sayid. So yeah, they drown Sayid. Dogen summons Hurley to speak with him privately, and through their conversation they find out that Jacob is dead, and everyone freaks out. They all start grabbing stuff and running around frantically, and they all start spreading ash around the walls of the temple. Hurley asks pretty much what's going on, and Lennon pretty much explains that they are trying to keep him out. What are you? I'm not a what, Ben. I'm a who. You're the monster. Let's not resort to name-calling. I love that little scene. Now, this was probably one of my favorite scenes from the entire premiere. And we get a couple little indications that Smokey is, in fact, able to channel the memories of whosever form he is taking, or using, or borrowing. I don't know how exactly it works. But whosever form he is, he's able to channel their memories. Which, of course, is useful because he can further disguise himself as that actual person. So now we get a little bit of his motive. Just a little bit. First, he tells Ben exactly what John Locke was thinking as Ben was killing him, which was a heartbreaking scene. I mean, that was rough. And then he says something extremely interesting, that opposite of what John Locke wanted, Smokey wants to go home. So Smokey wants to go home. Where is home? Is it the temple? I mean, up to this point, I assumed that Smokey lived in the temple, but I guess he was just getting as close as he could to it without actually going in, because apparently there's a lot of people in the temple that don't want him there. And of course, we also have to consider that maybe the smoke monster's home is somewhere off the island. With Jacob gone, Smokey no longer has a reason to hide his identity. So he just waltzes over to Richard and is like, "It's good to see you without those chains." What? What chains? And poor Richard just looks scared out of his mind as soon as he realizes who John Locke actually is. So Richard knows something about this entity, Smokey, Nemesis, whatever. We just don't know exactly what their history together was. Could Richard have been a slave on the Black Rock? Or is Richard some sort of other entity that was imprisoned somehow and maybe Jacob set him free? The possibilities are endless. I also love how Smokey comes out and waves his fingers, declaring how disappointed he is with the others. Why is he disappointed with the others, though? Was there some sort of change in leadership? Were the others once followers of Smokey? Okay, now this is one of the reasons why I really, really love Lost. And that's when something weird happens, and they get put into a weird situation where they meet these weird people. There's always one thing that happens that is just really weird, that completely freaks out the people who are supposed to know what's going on. And of course I'm talking about the fact that Sayid just decides to stop being dead. And this freaks Lennon out just as much as it freaks out Jack and his crew. Miles, we had already seen, was unsettled sitting next to Sayid's body. Was he, like, unable to communicate with him? Was Sayid even dead? I mean, what does this mean? Did the dirty fountain of youth water thingy just take longer to heal him? Did Jacob decide to hop on board Sayid for a test drive? Or did he actually come back to life, something that John Locke and even Jacob himself is not able to do? Unless, of course, Jacob can come back to life and he just chooses not to for some tactical advantage. I keep thinking Star Wars: A New Hope when it comes to Jacob's death.
Your powers are weak, old man.
You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
And we know that the producers are at least aware of Star Wars, so, you know, they throw in all sorts of references, so it's not out of the question. I mean, go back to Season 5's finale. Jacob barely tried to convince Ben not to stab him. In fact, it's almost like he dared him to stab him. At the beginning of Season 6, Ben even realizes this and questions why Jacob didn't even fight back. So I'm going to give you kind of a theory. It's not really anything huge, but I think a major part of Season 6 is going to be some sort of comeback for Jacob. Perhaps he had his own loophole through the Oceanic Six, which he took special care in finding off of the island, sometimes even before they came to the island, just to physically touch them. I mean, if anyone can come back to life, I think it would be Jacob. And you know, I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw some sort of white smoke monster thing floating around.
So, what exactly did you see back there? I saw it once, you know.
And what did you see?
I saw a very bright light. It was beautiful.
That is not what I saw.
Then again, Jacob did stress the importance of Sayid surviving, or else we are all in a lot of trouble. Now, why would Sayid's death equal lots of trouble? This is going to be a crazy season. Next week's episode has been entitled What Kate Does, which is a reference to Season 2, Episode 9, What Kate Did. That is exactly what we want. A Kate-centric episode this early in the season. Maybe she'll hook up with a Japanese guy. Now, as much as I love Kate and this new intriguing altered timeline device, I would really rather know more about what's happening on the island between Jacob and Smokey and Richard and all them. Of course, this might change later this season. I mean, this altered timeline is taking up half of every episode, so I don't doubt that it's important, so hopefully I'll care more later. It's just when you get into altered timelines, after there's been lots of time travel, it just becomes infuriatingly confusing. But before I end this, I have one more topic. After the premiere, executive producers Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Now, Kimmel gave them several situations from the premiere and asked them to answer just coincidence or intentional or not coincidence. And here are the results. Shannon not being on the plane was intentional. Jack being nervous instead of Rose was also intentional. Jack receiving 1 bottle of vodka instead of 2 was intentional. I don't really believe that one, but whatever. The fact that Michael and Walt were not on the plane was fate, and they hinted at the possibility that something is inhabiting Sayid. Also, the series finale has been set for May 23rd, 2010. 23. Nice. So I guess I need to do a question of the week thingy since I've committed to doing recaps. So this week your question is, how did Sayid come back to life? Do you think it's actually Sayid or an imposter using his body? Possibly Jacob, Smokey, or some other entity which we have yet to encounter? See, I got 2 questions in there. 2 episodes, 2 questions. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I will be back next week with a recap of Episode 3, What Kate Does. And please make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching.